Hi, I'm Sandra Ray, author of Angel's Aid Guided Meditation for Children and Parents. So, I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about temper tantrums. So, if you have a young child and you've experienced a temper tantrum with them, you will know that it's not something that's very pleasant to experience. And we often wonder if we're dealing with these situations correctly, particularly as parents. We question ourselves a lot and how we deal with these things. So, I'm here just to talk to you a little bit about temper tantrums, why they happen, and what we can do. So, the first thing to realize is the source of the temper tantrum. It's usually tiredness, it can be hunger, fatigue, it can be sickness, and usually they are triggered by something very small, and it can be something very slight that normally wouldn't irritate the child. And temper tantrums can also be a form of severe irritation if a child is not getting what they want or if they're not getting their way. But generally, there's more to it than just that. There's something that's going deeper than that, and usually it can be a few factors that are at play. So it can be tiredness, hunger, frustration, and it can be these things that have been building up. So the first thing is not to blame ourselves. It's not usually our fault that the child is reacting this way. It's not because we're bringing them up badly. Every child has temper tantrums, so it's normal. So just to realize that it is normal. So when we realize this, we can also realize that temper tantrums always pass. They always play out after a certain period and they never last. So that's something that is reassuring to know, because I think sometimes when we're in the midst of it, it can feel as if it's going to go on forever. So just to realize that it will pass. And then the other thing is to realize that we aren't trying to suppress the tantrum. We aren't trying to control the child's emotions. We have to realize that it will pass in its own time. And I think that's one thing that we really try to do sometimes that we shouldn't do, is when we try to stop the tantrum. I think we sometimes feel, oh, well, we'll just stop it and the embarrassment to be over, or, we'll get this over with as quickly as possible. And that often exacerbates the situation. So, the first thing I want to stress is the allowing part of it. So, we need to allow the tantrum to happen, whether we're at home or we're in the middle of a busy shopping mall. Wherever we are, we have to allow it to happen. And unless there's some immediate danger, unless the child or somebody else is in some immediate danger, just allow the child to have their tantrum, allow them to lie on the floor kicking and screaming, allow them to play it out in its full. And, they're going to do this anyway. So the least resistance that we put in, the better. And yes, of course, it's going to be embarrassing and it's going to be something that we'd rather not experience, particularly if other people are watching or if we're in public. But generally, I find that if there are other people about, they will be more sympathetic than judgmental. And the people who are judgmental, they probably haven't been through the same thing. And the people who are sympathetic have been through it as well. So we've all been there. Um, okay, so we have to realize that children have a right to express themselves. They've a right to express their emotions. And if we try to suppress their emotions, they're only going to come back stronger at another stage, or they're going to kick back in that moment with stronger emotions. And particularly with a temper tantrum, we want to avoid it escalating any more than it already has. So if we allow it and we don't try to stop it, it will help the tantrum to run its course. So when we are allowing, it doesn't mean that we're giving in. So often when we think about allowing, we think about giving in, or saying that the child can have something that we've said that they can't have. So if we think about, if the child is demanding something like sweets and we've said no, they can't have it, and they start having a tantrum, we aren't going to give those sweets to the child. We're going to allow them to have the tantrum, but we're not going to give in and give them the thing which we've said that they can't have. And if we don't give in, if we allow but don't give in, then the child will realize that if they are doing all this kicking and screaming and they get what they actually want, we give in to them, then it'll have all been worth it. If they do all the kicking and screaming and they don't get what they want, then they'll soon realize that it's not worth the effort. So they'll think twice about doing the same thing the next time. So stand your ground, remain strong, don't give in, but also remember that this is done in the most loving way, that, remaining resolute doesn't mean you remain unloving. So throughout the tantrum, remain in a loving, relaxed, composed way. Allow the child to, carry out whatever, kicking, screaming, whatever shouting it is that they want to do. But all the time reassuring them that you're there for them, calmly saying, I love you, I'm here for you. And if they do feel that, you're being loving towards them, they may try and test you a little bit. So they may say, okay, well, why don't you give me those sweets then? And we simply just reply, okay, well, no, not at this moment. You can maybe have them in the future or at another time, but at this moment you can't have them. And remaining convicted and strong without giving in. And it takes practice, and it does take a lot of willpower, particularly when we are accustomed to giving in or giving them what they want just for a bit of peace and quiet. It can sometimes feel like the easier route, but in the long term, it's not. So when the child realizes that you're there with them, that you're not going to leave, and that you're lovingly saying to them, I'm here for you, everything's okay, I love you, but you can't have the sweets, they're going to realize that they are loved and that you are there, and they're going to feel reassured. So that's a good thing for them to feel reassured. And when they feel that way, they will realize that, you know, they don't need to kick and scream to get our attention. We're going to stay there with them. And that's one thing that's really important, is never to walk away during the tantrum. Always stay there with the child and remain with them throughout. Don't walk away, because they'll feel abandoned if you walk away. They'll feel that when they most need your help, you've walked away from them and abandoned them. So stay beside them. And if they allow you, put your hand on their back, give their back a rub, and, keep stating, I'm here for you. If they're in a state of panic and they, don't want you to touch them, or they push your hand away, that's fine. Just allow them to do that. Don't allow them to hit, obviously, but allow them to have their space and allow them to be in their space. And in time, they will allow you to gently touch their back or their leg and just say, it's okay, I'm here for you. And then finally, when the tantrum has passed, when it's run its course, we can sit down and ask a few questions. We can go through a rundown of what's happened, and of course in a loving way, and just asking the child, what happened? Did the upset come back? Or use a word that they're familiar with. The sadness, the anger come back, whatever it is that they might be familiar with. I usually say, did the upset come back? And my child will respond, yes. So then when we ask that question, I go on to ask, where in your body did you feel it? And usually it's around the stomach, or it can be a little bit lower down around the hips. And, it depends on the child. It can be in other areas of their body, but they will be very clear about where they've been feeling it. So allow them to either point to an area or tell you where they're feeling it. And when they've identified where they're feeling this upset, ask them if it has a colour, if it has a shape or a texture. Get them to describe it. And you'd be surprised about how willing they are to do this. They are, once they've calmed down, they're quite willing to be open. And even if it's only a one word answer, you don't need a big long sentence, or even if they're just pointing to their tummy saying that's where they felt it, you don't need any more than that. It's just acknowledging what happened. So when you've acknowledged what's happened, where it is, what the colour is, if there's any texture, you can then ask if there's anything left there. And if there is, you can get them to breathe into it and blow it out. And in my book, Angel's Aid Guided Meditation for Children and Parents, I explain how to do this. There's some lovely breathing techniques that explains how to get your child to use the breath to calm down, and it's really, really effective. So use the breathing techniques, use the breath, and allow them to breathe out any remaining turmoil or anything else that they're holding on to. And then at the end, ask them if there's anything else that they'd like to talk to you about it. Or you could ask them if the upset comes back, what would be a better thing to do the next time, or what would be a better way to react the next time. And if they don't have any suggestions, you could suggest using the breathing techniques and see how they feel about this. And of course, use the breathing techniques not just when a child is feeling stressed, but when they're feeling calm, and practice it at a time when they're happy so they know what to do, so that when they do start getting stressed, they'll be able to use the breathing techniques. And of course, during the tantrum, if they're willing to, encourage them to use the breathing. And if they're not, that's fine. Just respect how they're feeling. But always at the end of the tantrum, I find that the breathing techniques really help. And you'll be surprised at how quickly the tantrum will dissolve if it's allowed and if you talk about it in this way. And what will happen is the next time the child will know what's happening. They'll have identified with this feeling of upset. They'll have identified where it is, what colour it is, what shape it is, and they'll be able to tell you the upset is back, and they'll be able to deal with it a little bit better. So I hope this has helped, and I will be back with some more tips and techniques in the future. So keep an eye on the space. Bye.